This episode of Small Business Leaders Podcast is brought to you by Adams Lane Photography.
Hello and welcome to the Legacy Podcast Studio and this edition of the Small Business Leaders Podcast. My name is Lamar Powell, and this is my wonderful co-host, Audra Adams.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Today, we have such an inspirational guest here, Dr. Kim Snider, who is a part of Village Family Chiropractic here in Kernersville. And she is so much more than just a chiropractor. I have heard her speak, and boy, are you in for a treat. So let's get into it. Welcome, Kim, to the podcast. Actually, it's Dr. Kim Snider. It's not just Kim. I have been excited for you to be a guest before you ever knew my name, honestly. I came to a Women in Business day.
Conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be the best. And they have 4 distinct speakers, and each of those speakers took on a part of the year: winter, fall, summer, and spring. And they kind of all, had the attributes of each one of those. And you were winter. Mm-hmm. And so you were the last one that got up to speak. And all the speakers were great. But when you got up there to speak, you were speaking my language in a lot of ways because of your knowledge of alternative medicine and how our bodies heal and all these things. And there's a question in here in a minute. But it so impressed me that the next part of your speech that you gave, and we'll get into that in a little bit, really flipped it on its head and gave me such respect for you and your family and your mindset of what you've dealt with. So I want to first ask you about how long have you been in practice and where did you reside before here? Have you always been here?
I actually came here from Atlanta.
Okay.
So big change from chiropractic school. That's where I graduated from. That's where me and my husband met as well. And we came up here pregnant with our first baby and started practice with his mom, who owns High Point Chiropractic.
Oh, okay.
And just 2 broke kids right out of college, really. I mean, trying to get it together in a tiny little condo, $600 a month, which was massive to us.
And now it would be great.
It was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to make mortgage, or rent rather. And started the practice there. We had our first child, and that was a life-altering event, of course, just going from no children to children, right? That changes you in ways you could never imagine until you're actually there. And with our first child specifically, I had my plan. Like many women do, we have our plan. We know exactly how we want it to go. And most of the time it will not go that way.
Exactly.
But doesn't always completely do a 180 like I felt mine did. And I was totally unprepared for it. Down in Atlanta, I was preparing a home birth, moved to North Carolina, realized that was not available. And so we very quickly had to come up with, I was due in 4 months. So we very quickly had to come up with a plan. We found a wonderful birth center in Statesville that I just really felt called to. And God was like, okay, this is your space. And we went through, it was a very long labor and delivery. I stayed at home as long as I could. And then I was 41 weeks in 1 day when labor started. And I was in labor for 54 hours. We went to the birth center, and they were, I labored down there for about 12 hours. And they were like, I think we need a transfer. And I said, am I able to refuse that? Or is this we have to transfer for my good? And she's like, you can do what you want. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to refuse. And so we did another 6 hours. And at that point, my midwife came in and was like, now it's you and the baby. We need a transfer. It's for your good. And so we transferred. The doctor there first said, when he first saw me, knowing I was coming from the birth center, he said, "I'm so sorry you're here." And for that was so validating, and just I felt like he really saw me, because everything that led up to that had been nothing short of just devastation for me.
Yeah.
And so just for him to be able to validate, like, man, I just know you're not, like, you do not want to be here at all, was so wonderful. And so he helped as much as he could.
Hold on one moment.
Yeah,
It was on Do Not Disturb.
it's okay.
Love, I'm in a podcast, and it was on Do Not Disturb. I hope you're okay. Are you okay?
Yes, yeah, I'm fine. I'm sorry. I didn't know.
No, I know. Okay, I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye. It was on Do Not Disturb.
I'm glad everything was okay, because that means that
I know, I have
it could
to-
have been pushed through for like emergency.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah, I do have them. Yeah. So anyway, we can cut that, or we don't have to.
No,
So
totally fine.
you are at the hospital at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're at the hospital. I hear, so at this point, the doctor is trying all he can. We're trying all we can with our midwife team. I even hear a woman next to me literally just deliver her baby. I remember that sticking out to me so much, because I go, okay, that's all you have to do right there. Just do it right now, because I knew what was at stake. They're about to suggest a C-section. And anyway, so he shows me her heartbeat. She's not rebounding the way she's supposed to. I'm educated enough to where I know that there is a level of rebounding that is not supposed to happen with a vaginal birth. But hers was just plummeting and staying really low. So there was no rebounding at all. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead and do this. So we went for the C-section. On the table, I was literally getting sewn up. On the table, I called my girlfriend, who's also a chiropractor in the area, and I said, knowing that a C-section could impact my breastfeeding relationship with my daughter, I was like, hey, can you bring me some breast milk just in case? And she was up within, hours, brought me all of her breast milk she could. And we were able to nurse just fine, no worries. But I was in the birth world, meaning, I'm a pediatric prenatal chiropractor. So I work with birth providers of all levels, all around the triad and surrounding areas. And I was in the birth world. And what I didn't realize whenever I became a mom is that postpartum depression can knock you out no matter how much knowledge you have of it. And you may not even realize it. And so I was up as a first-time mom, sore everywhere, no idea what was going on, recovering from not just labor and delivery, but also labor and birth, but also major surgery. And I was serving wine and appetizers to people who were coming to visit my baby and holding my baby instead of sitting my butt down. Oh. And that's my biggest thing now to my moms that I work with, where I'm just like, you have to honor what your body just did for you for the last 10 months. And you need to be held, not your baby. You need to hold your baby. Let other people hold you. And that's from personal experience. And it was
beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
So true.
And it's things that just get overlooked, It's when we're pregnant, it's all about mom, baby, mom, baby. And then whenever a baby comes out, all right, mom, we'll see you in 6 weeks to basically clear you for sex. And then, but now it's all about baby.
Yeah.
And it's like mom just gets thrown to the side.
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder that we have these high rates of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and the like. And because we're just not a postpartum centered society, unfortunately.
Correct.
And hopefully that's changing in small little areas. That's what I want our practice to hopefully impact, as much as we can. But it was that experience that once I kind of collected myself a little bit, I realized, where I'm practicing. I was so grateful for the opportunity to practice with my mother-in-law. She's an amazing chiropractor, taught me so much. But I also felt just so drawn to have my own space and my own practice with the village and tribe that I kind of create,
Sure, which I love that on your website.
Yeah.
You make that very clear.
Yeah.
And even on the website, it's such a supportive, even tone in every bit of script that you have in there. It's just, you definitely feel like it does take a village. And I would say I would have been to so many chiropractors, I would never be able to name them all. I have never met a chiropractor that specialized in neonatal and post, pre and post for birth. So that caught my eye too. So this experience, how did you know that you could help someone else in that capacity that you needed help in?
It was before my experience. I think that was kind of laid on my heart. So before I became a chiropractor, I worked in a prison. Not a lot of people. A lot of people are like, "How did that bridge happen?"
Yeah,
I asked myself
looking
the
at
same
him.
question.
No, I was wondering. I saw that too. You had. Don't you have a degree in
Criminal justice
criminal
and psychology.
Yeah, two.
yeah.
Well, really three.
Yeah.
A BA in criminal justice and a BA in psychology.
Psychology. Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Yeah. So in my past life, I wanted to do basically profiling for the FBI, CIA,
wow.
working with criminal minds. So
You need to meet
is
one of
too
my
that
cool.
kids.
that was like my, I visited crime scenes in college with our crime scene investigation classes. I mean, I was inundated. Like, this was good. This was my life calling. Like, as far as what I knew, right? Like, this is my passion. I'm gonna fight the bad guys.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get them all. And I don't think I realized the heart that took. Like, you have to have a heart of steel for that. Yeah. Mine's more like a mushy marshmallow. So whenever an opportunity arose to work in the prison system and help with rehabilitation on that degree, I was on the staff psychology team, and I was a minimum security. So we did a lot of reintegration. So I did home visits to make sure that whenever our guys went back home, that it was a supportive environment. There weren't drugs in the home, all those
Sure.
things.
Yeah, sure.
And then I would prep the family of like, okay, guys, so here's what this looks like whenever dad comes home, husband comes home, son comes home, what have you. And so we would have these family counseling sessions. And so that first kind of love for family environment kind of sparked there, because it was very early on. I realized, like, if there's a problem that somebody has, it's not their problem. This is a family thing.
Correct.
And so we need to address what's going on in the family. And that can get uncomfortable, right?
Stepping
people-
on some toes.
People don't like to be, well, don't blame me.
Yeah.
I did, and everyone does their best, of course. But it was definitely a family environment. But I could only say to little Susie Q, Daddy's not coming home again for another year, because I had to send him back down to brown clothes because he shanked somebody last night so many times before my heart just broke. And the recidivism rate is just so high. The system's so broke. And it was too much. And I just felt like I wasn't called there anymore. So I felt broken at that point.
Yeah, it takes so much out of you.
That was it, man. That was what I was on this earth to do. I was like, so what do you want me to do now, God? And so I just felt totally lost. And that was whenever God made it very clear to put my resume on Craigslist, of all places. I'm dating this story now, because that was when you put your resume on Craigslist, right? And so I put my resume on Craigslist, and a chiropractic office called me. It was, I remember it was a Sunday afternoon. I was like, who's this random phone number calling me? And they wanted me to come in Tuesday morning for an interview. And I was like, okay. I don't know anything about chiropractic at this point. I didn't know it was for back pain. Nothing. It could have literally just been a foreign language for me. Okay. So I went to, I'm going to date this again, AskJeeves.com. You guys remember this?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Great grandfather of Google. And I was like, what is chiropractic? And so I researched this guy who I was interviewing with, his office. I found out he was a chiropractor, but that chiropractors are doctors. He went to school for 8 years to become this. I mean, I knew nothing. It was totally blowing my mind. I'm like, what is he talking about? The power that made the body heals the body? Like, we can heal ourselves? What is he saying? This guy sounds wild. But I was drawn, and I was kind of hooked. I'm like, what is this, right? So I walk in on Tuesday, and I learned he was a doctor, right? So I'm thinking it's a doctor's office that I grew up in, and there's going to be a ton of sick people. and it's going to be real sterile and like real nobody touch each other, you know?
Yeah.
And when I walked in, oh my gosh, the energy was wild. I mean, the guy who I recognize on the website, he's over here on some table making some noise and high-fiving whoever just walked by. I'm like, is that a patient? Is that someone who works here? What is going on? And then the woman at the front desk is like, oh, you must be Kim. Hey, comes around, gives me a big hug. I'm like, I don't know what's happening here, but I need to be a part of it.
And that was here?
That was the interview. That was in Asheville, actually.
Okay.
So I worked at the prison system in Asheville, and then got this interview. And that was at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. And by 1 p.m. that day, I was their new chiropractic assistant.
Wow.
Wow.
When God puts you on his path, man, it just goes fast, right?
Okay.
Like
Yes, it
within a
does.
week, I knew I was supposed to go to school to be a chiropractor. And I'd already had that love for family. Somebody had shared with me, it was actually the doctor I was working with, Dr. Acton. He was another amazing mentor of mine. He had shared with me that the founder of chiropractic had talked about how chiropractic could empty the prison systems. And that's really all I could hear, because I just came from the prison system and how messed up it was. And he said the prison system is not a human problem, it's a health problem. And I remember thinking, how is that possible? He said, sick people make sick decisions.
So true.
And if your health is right, then your brain is going to be operating the way it was intended to, and therefore not making these poor decisions that, you know, end us up in prison or addiction or what have you, right? And that to me was totally a God thing. I mean, he was just like, he put someone speaking my language in my path, and that was that 180 that I needed. And I was like, okay, I hear you. This is where I need to go.
So the office that you went to work in, your first chiropractic, how long were you there, but also did they support you moving into that field?
Yeah, so absolutely. Dr. Acton was, I think from the beginning was just like, you want to go to chiropractic school, don't you? You know, I mean, just saw the fire and the passion that once I got it, it was like, oh, like that burning fire, it was ignited within my soul now. And he was very much like, so what do you think about chiropractic school on a couple of different occasions? And I remember saying, like, I will not go back to school again. Like, you cannot make me. And then you want me to go to school for another 8 years? What?
Oh,
You know,
my
like,
gosh.
no way. But once that fire was ignited, I didn't care about anything that it took to get there. I was just like, let's go. And I even asked him, what school should I go to? And he went to Logan. Any of my chiropractic friends that listen to this, I might make him upset, but he went to Logan and he was like, go to Life University, hands down. Like, I'm like, why not Logan? He's like, don't go there, go to Life. And so I did. I just listened to him. I didn't tour any other schools. All my other schools that I ever went to, you know, we toured 12 of them before you pick one.
Right.
I went to Life University, did a weekend there, kind of a weekend experience to, you know, meet the professors and all that. And I was hooked, and that's where I went down to Atlanta.
So I have questions how did you sustain yourself during that time? Were you still working at the chiropractic office and going to school full time?
So I finished with Acton. I was with him for about maybe 9 months or so. The associate doctor there actually left to open her own practice. And I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to kind of see what opening a practice would look like. So I actually left with her to open up her practice and kind of see from the ground up what it would take. And it was a lot of work and a lot of sleepless nights. And she worked so hard to get that up and running. And I was so grateful to have the opportunity to be able to see that firsthand because I was with her for, I would say maybe 3 or 4 months. Watching this process, and then I went to chiropractic school in June. With chiropractic school, they looked at my degrees, which was criminal justice and psychology, and they were like, so where's all your sciences? I'm like, what do I need science for? You know? They're like, well, it's just most of your doctorate degree. So that was all the things I was trying to avoid being in school were all the sciences. And it was my first 2 years, full first 2 years of chiropractic. Everyone sitting next to me was all pre-med. I mean, all, you know, and they're like, wow, this is great. What a review. And I'm like, Yeah, totally. I'm like texting my tutor. I'm like, I'm gonna need an extra 7 hours this week,
Goodness.
So I did not. It was a struggle. So I went down there, and I actually worked at chiropractic offices, just doing screenings for them on the weekends when I could, assisting in the office when I could. But then it's a really intense program, so eventually I could only just be in the program.
Yeah. I mean, I've really heard from more than one chiropractic doctor that going to chiropractic school is much harder than even going to med school, because they require you to know so much more about the body and anatomy. And I don't know if that's true, but I have heard that on multiple occasions.
I don't know if it's necessarily harder. I think it's a different kind of hard. I think that I know that as far as our schoolings go, they mirror each other very much. I think more than what the average person understands and knows about. But instead of pharmacology, because we get no pharmacological studies, we do radiology. So no medical doctor is able to read their own x-rays or even take their own x-rays. They refer out to radiologists. We're able to take our own, read our own, diagnose our own. And then they have more microbiology and pathology, and we have more anatomy, physiology, functionality. So D.D. Palmer, the founder of chiropractic, once said, medicine is a study of what makes you die. Chiropractic is a study of what allows you to live. And that for me was such this beautiful dichotomy where, yes, I don't want to die. And if I'm going to be in a car accident, please have it be in America, because we have the best emergency medical team ever. But once we're done here, get me over to somebody who knows how to help my body express life.
Yes.
And that's where the co-management has to come in. And what we really strive for in our practice is co-management.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to explain that.
Yes.
Yeah, the difference.
And so in my health journey, I'm not going to go into it all, but basically 18 years old, I was bitten by bugs in the Bahamas, and 5 days later I began to have seizures. And I'd never been sick a day in my life. And that turned into lesions on the brain. That turned into all kinds of systems, shutting down, and, oh, you have MS. Oh, you have lupus. Oh, you have this. And it ended up with me being disabled for 12 years.
Wow.
And so I say all that to say, in those 12 years, I realized pretty quickly that the medical community that we have had set up couldn't help what they called a wastebasket disease pattern, because I just wasn't fitting into one box. I was fitting into so many boxes. And at the time, we traveled and we sang, and we would go to the West Coast for about 4 months out of the year. And out there, even at that time, 27 years ago, they were very naturopathic minded, iridologists, kinesiology, all of those things I began to learn. And I realized that, yes, I still needed some medication, but the healing was never coming from that. And I think that set me on a journey that that has not only changed my life, but my children's life, of how we operate in our home with regards to sickness, with regards to disease, all of those things. It's definitely a mindset that's not talked about in a way like this. Like, hey, it seems like it's polarized, that you're either on one side or you're on the other. And I agree totally that there needs to be an intersection there. And thankfully, Father has put a couple of really great doctors in my life that are also, like, one of their husband is a chiropractor, and she's a neurologist. So those kind of intersections, it took a long time to build the right kind of team. And I still, to this day, I'll get tested in hair follicles or saliva test, or, any of the other tests that show so much more in depth than a regular metabolic panel is going to show. So I say all that to say thank you for continuing the education of our community here, and and that reach. And so anyway, go ahead, Lamar.
Yeah, no, it's the same experience with us. And I hate the conflict between the fields, and there needs to be a coming together. And so I think it's important to advocate for those things, because my wife's health is the same way. The biggest help for her has been through chiropractic. I'm appreciative of. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's just been an amazing difference. I can say a lot about that, and I'm thankful for it. And I think one of the things that helped me too is that I thought it was a really neat thing is my great grandmother was a like a homeopathic doctor.
Oh, really?
I even have her certificate.
cool.
It's huge.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And she practiced in Live Oak, Florida, years and years ago, decades ago.
Really?
Yeah,
I learned so
it's
much.
Really,
That's awesome.
Yeah, just amazing story. She owned a hotel and she practiced as well. But yeah, it's
Good
been
for
a
her.
big difference. I know with my wife's health, and it's been real eye-opening for me.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And part of that education that you have, the desire for that you have, that kind of went into the prenatal and post and how do you is it neonatal? How you say
Perinatal and pediatric.
pediatric? So
all the pre, the post, the interim.
yes. So you meet your husband, who, by the way, has an amazing story as well. We need to just have him on as well. But y'all came together, and you had seen firsthand how to start a chiropractic, business. So you knew what you were getting into. And I don't know if he did or he didn't. He had no clue. Okay.
No idea.
No clue.
He was raised in chiropractic, so
It was just available to him.
It was his life. It's so wild.
Yeah.
The way he was raised and how I was raised. We have such different lives, but it shows the impact that chiropractic can have in somebody, and especially the children. Because, I mean, I was taking muscle relaxers at 14 as a young athlete because I was, sore, or high ankle sprain or what have you. And I mean, he literally did not call a girl back for a second date in college because she popped a Tylenol at the restaurant once.
Oh, he's hardcore.
So he was so we were just raised so different.
Wow.
I was so medically raised, and he was so chiropractically raised, where these normal things in my life were so just foreign to him. That just never even crossed his mind that people just take a Tylenol because a preemptive headache might come up, because around this time I usually get a headache. It was just wild to me. It's still wild to me now, raising our children, seeing it happen for them.
Yes.
And the trajectory change that has occurred, because I just was on so many antibiotics, so many drugs, as a child. And once that script flipped, it was forever the goal of, I want my children's trajectory to be different. But you guys actually made a really good point in regards to, you were talking about the mini boxes that you checked.
Yes.
And the co-management aspect. The only person that loses in the current system right now is our patients.
Yes.
And so I tell my patients this all the time. And Joe sometimes you got to stop doing that, but I will not, because if your provider is not interested in co-managing with your other team members, like your chiropractor or your functional med, or open to a naturopath or a functional or a full panel done with hair analysis, saliva testing, whatever, because they don't understand it, it makes them uncomfortable.
Oh, very.
And they throw out that's just not proven with science.
It's actually science. It's legitimately science.
Yes. Then you need a new provider. If they are not open to co-management, you need a new provider, because true providers that are open to that actually have your best interests. Sorry, I get excited. Your best interest at hand.
Right.
They put their ego aside and the money that they're going to be making off of you and your sickness aside by the pharmaceutical companies. And they say, okay, this is not my wheelhouse. I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to connect you with someone who does. And then I work with several providers. They call us. They don't know how to deal with an ear infection without antibiotics. So they send them to us and they call us. Hey, I've got this patient. Here's what's going on. Do you mind if I send them over for a consult?
And then the ear infection gets better.
And then you have a whole trajectory of a child's life changed, and then that child's children and that children's
Because they
children.
didn't have to have this round of antibiotics and this round of antibiotics and tubes in their ears and all the things that, and I am thankful that I went through, and to the extent I am still, in those spaces. But it's just with a different outlook. And I was able to raise my children. If we didn't run to the doctor, I think I've only had them on antibiotics once in their life, and they're 17 and 20. I mean, two of them that I have 6, but 2 of them, 17 and 20. I think they've only had one round, and I'm so grateful that I was
amazing.
able to learn, what were the natural antibiotics that you can take, what fights it, what causes it, all of those things. I'm very curious by nature. And I've had to be. So that's very interesting. But I will say, and I don't know if you could agree with this, I had a naturopath doctor tell me I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I would fly out to Tulsa because Tulsa also was, besides California years ago, Tulsa was really raising up in the naturopath and functional medicine community more so than here at the time. So I was flying to Tulsa, and the doctor looked at me and he said, "Hey, we think in pictures." And I was like, yeah, I guess we do. All right. And he said, "So right now I want you to tell me who you think you are." And I did not skip a beat. And I said, "Oh, I'm sick." And he said, "Well, then you are. And then there's nothing I can do for you." I went, "What? Wait a minute. Don't tell me there's nothing you can do." And he was like, "Well, if that, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, Audra. And if you believe that to your core, then nothing I'm going to do is going to make any difference until you understand that you do have more power and your body has more power than you're giving it right now." And it lit a fire under me. It changed everything. I began to learn, every thought, everything. And I'm sure you know this, that it has to go somewhere. A negative thought, a positive thought, all those things.
That's right.
And for those who are listening, we're just geeking out over here. So it's all true.
Yeah,
it's all
absolutely.
science.
It's all, science-based.
It's
Absolutely.
all science. But it really changes the patient experience, and it makes you feel like you have some measure of say. And that measure of say means that you have to do some work on yourself. You have to watch what you say. You have to watch what you identify yourself as. And they put many labels on you in these communities, and you start acting that way.
That's right.
Because somebody told you that's what you have.
That's what you are.
I don't have anything.
Right.
I am dealing with situations, but that is not who I am.
That's right.
So to get that across is some of the things that I watched you get across in that meeting. And so I don't know if you have a question.
No, I did think it's important. Talk about triggering, because we've been to some, and I'm not opposed to traditional medicine. Has a place.
Me either.
But you know what? Let me decide that, and don't put me in a box. And I watched that happen to my wife just recently, and I got so angry with that doctor. And there's what's happened to common sense on some things. And I've watched my wife experience some very tragic things in her life. And for somebody to tell me, "Oh, that's not even possible. It's not scientifically possible." And I called him out on it and was so angry because I experienced this with my wife. Don't tell me that that's not the case.
Right.
So what I want to see is across the medical field, all of these different, and I've seen the functional medicine help, the chiropractic help in situations where traditional don't. And I'm not opposed to all of it, but let me decide and let's work together. So we can help the person who is sick or ill
Yeah.
get better.
Right.
I mean, would you agree with?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In the criminal justice world, there's a theory called the labeling theory. I worked with juveniles for a short amount of time. I did not last long with juveniles. I didn't do well. with them, but I know my limits.
Don't come to my house.
Yeah, I know my limits. And so I worked with them a short amount of time, but a lot of our training was a labeling theory. And I was deconstructed in school to not label these children certain ways because this theory is so alive and well in the criminal justice system. We label them as juvenile delinquents, and then they live up to this word of juvenile delinquents.
Exactly.
And therefore we have this high recidivism rate with our adult inmates because many of them were labeled very young and they were a product of their environment and told, well, you're just never amount to anything, that you're going to be just like your daddy, what have you. And so we were fighting this whole, lifelong label that they've been given and expected to change it in, 6 months of rehab at minimum security prison. And so that labeling theory concept followed me into my holistic world and medical training because I saw it happen all the time in my own family. Not realizing it then, but looking back now, they were giving a diagnosis and they lived up to this diagnosis. And the diagnosis is just a simple way that they can attach different pharmacological plans to you. Yeah. That's why we have diagnoses. It used to be so we could attach different plant-based therapies to you, leaching therapies to you. Right? It was a way to treat it. And one thing that chiropractors never do is treat anything. And so I get this phone call all the time. Hey, does chiropractic treat ear infections? Does it treat breech babies? Does it treat low back pain? My answer is absolutely not. We allow the body to be well connected, the brain and the body to be well connected, and then we step back and let the body do its job. It's already designed to do that, and I am not interested in treating anything. Treating means there's something wrong with you, right? It's like you treat your deck because it's cracked and broken, right? Like our bodies are not sick or broken. They're responding to the environment of which we've put them in. And so what we need to look at is what's the environment doing. We treat our houseplants better than we treat ourselves sometimes.
You're so right. I mean, it's like having a car and putting water in the gas tank and expecting it to run great.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my car?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to fix this.
Yeah. What do I do? Just send it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
and
absolutely.
have no role in that. And this is where we were talking about that kind of split here. You're saying where people have to step up and take responsibility. What role did I play in this? And unfortunately, there's a victimized mindset that's growing a little bit, I've noticed, in the last 4 years, where it's harder and harder to have that conversation with patients, with people, because it's not my fault. So what are you saying? I did this to myself? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is your environment, your body is acting so perfectly to your environment, and I want to know what your environment looks like. And your environment is a accumulation of your decisions. And so we do have to look at those decisions.
And people do not like being held responsible.
No, because
for
we're told
anything.
not to.
Right.
We're told not to. We are treated from the beginning not to. From the moment our mom went into labor, whenever birth got taken out of the home and became a medicalized problem, a medicalized sickness or disease that now they need to control, and they took it back into the hospital. And this was only two generations. I mean,
not long.
my Nana gave birth at home. My mom was born at home. Now, mind you, this was in Scotland, but even here, it's still, we're only looking at 2 generations that this flip happened so abruptly. And they took it back into the hospital. They, from the beginning, told that mother, you can't do it. We can do it. Thank God you have us. And what does that mother imprint on her children?
The exact same thing.
We can't do this. We need the doctor to do everything for us. And that's how they live their life. And so every little thing, go to the doctor. The doctor's going to know. There's no common sense taught anymore, and there's
And
no
when they
responsibility taught.
don't, the devastation for me at, going, because you think, oh, they're going to help. They're going to help. And again, I'm going to say I have some of a wonderful team of specialists now than I've ever had. But that does not relinquish my responsibility on where the holes are in my treatment care because of 27 years of taking responsibility for my health, for my environment. Is it all something that I can look at you and say, I'm not on any meds? No, it isn't. But I also am going to look at you and say, I'm on so many supplements for this reason or that reason. And I don't eat this because of this. There is a marriage of that. But I've honestly had to learn that I don't speak up to that in a normal doctor's office. And I even have told them, I'm like, I've had to learn the system for my best interest. And the other thing I want to say out there, and I'm going to look in this camera and say, everyone, you definitely have a responsibility to your own health. And there's never been a time that the information has been so accessible to the population as we have right now. Now, there are, Google doctors, and I'm not suggesting that you go down those rabbit holes. But as you are led, find out certain things and be open to the possibility that, I might have to change and not have my Starbucks today or whatever. But, it's so much more worth it to have my health, to be able to parent with any type of energy, to be able to come in here and do work. So, that's my little PSA over here.
It's a good one.
I'm very passionate about that. So you go in and you learn this whole new way of life, which your husband was already in.
Wild. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did that mesh?
So well. When I get stoked on something, I'm stoked on it. I mean, you can't stop me. I'm just going to burn right through it.
I love that about
the fire. Yeah. The fire gets lit and it is just move because we going. And if you're not coming with me, that's cool. No worries, but I got to go.
Yeah.
So from that chiropractic just in general was kind of like a gateway drug, if you will, because there was so much to it.
Yes.
There was so much more to it from everything. Vaccines are a controversial topic, but that was one of the ways that I was like, this is a different profession because I was raised military. I was vaccinated for every single thing under the sun, right? Yeah. Oh, I don't know what this vaccine's going to do. Give it to the military folk. We just saw that happen with the COVID shot. It just is what it is. But that's how I was raised. And so I was at a party. I'll never forget this. I was younger quarter in chiropractic school. And we were at a party, and there were some folks just from Atlanta and the surrounding areas there, so not part of the school. And we were talking, and they realized I'm in chiropractic school, and one of them says, "Oh, so you're not going to vaccinate your kids?" And it wasn't in a aggressive way. It was just it seemed so matter of fact that it made me like, what? And I was like, of course I'm going to vaccinate my kids. But it stuck in my head. And I'm like, why did he ask me that? And why did he ask me in that way?
Right.
And that's all I needed, because then I started researching. And I knocked, the first thing that I came across was the Family Protection Act of 1986, where all vaccine companies are federally protected from being held liable from any damage of their vaccines.
I'm going to sit over here and be a little upset right now. Okay.
Yeah. And they've kept that.
Yep.
They've kept that. And so that's all I needed to be like, whoa, that was a lid for me. So I popped that lid right off and I dove head first. And I've been researching vaccines ever since. And that was 14 years ago. And so that was my first kind of like, whoa, there is so much more to this than the power that the body is made heals the body. There is a whole world out there.
This is where your criminal justice degree came in, as far as probably digging deep into things like that.
Research, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it's nothing but research. Psychology, criminal justice, all research. And so my research mind was like, all right, we gotta dive further into this.
It's crazy, all the opinions about all this too. It really triggers a lot of people in a lot of ways, and I'm very opinionated about it. I don't express that
Yeah.
probably as much as I need to, but I don't know what to say or not say. But I do have my opinions. They're very, very strong. But it's amazing to me the different mindsets just on that one topic. But also gets back to what I said before. It ought to be my choice.
Right. And that's where
If
the
I
medical
want to do
freedom
that,
comes.
fine. That's my business. But if I don't be telling me.
What act came in?
Well, that's where the medical freedom that's where medical freedom advocacy comes in, and has to start with the mom and her children.
Yeah.
And this is where my love for perinatal world came in.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking, how can I help these kids be really, really healthy from the beginning? And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, I got to get to the kids. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's a whole pediatric chiropractic track I can take that's even more
awesome.
school. Yay, sign me up.
Yeah, and you're
Notice how
helping
my
the kids.
mindset changed at that point. I was like, more school, let's do it now, because I was purpose with a passion, right? And so I realize, oh, the kids. But then I'm like, oh no, actually it's mom. Moms make 80% of the healthcare decisions in America. And so I was like, no, we got to get to mom, and we got to get to her before she even has children. And that's where I realized we can really start changing the trajectory, because if we talk with mom and empower mom and making her decisions for her birth and her body and her baby during a time that is supposed to be so transformational, it is a moment where we are born into our power. Take it back from the medical community. I almost wore my shirt today, but Joe was like, don't do it. It's birth belongs to women. But it's a movement where it's taking it back out of the hands that be that have good intention. But whenever the WHO, World Health Organization, says that a developed country should have a C-section rate of less than 15%, and we're sitting at a 35% rate,
Right.
double that. Why are we not asking more questions? Why are we not taking it out of the institution and giving it back to mothers and the women who are birthing these babies?
That's where you're coming in to kind of bridge that gap. And are you doing that alone, or do you have a community that is like right there beside you, lifting you up?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Everything takes a village.
I agree.
All of it, every single thing. And my husband's been pivotal in all of it. So whenever I feel like you've actually asked me the question maybe 3 times, and we keep getting
It's fine.
off on different topics.
It's fine.
But when we got together, everything was so easy in our decisions for our children that whenever we counsel couples who are wanting to get married and start their family, we ask them the tough questions like, have you thought about if you're vaccinating your kids? Have you thought about circumcision? Have you thought about things that just came really natural and easy to us? Like, we did not have to have the conversations. And thank goodness, because we probably wouldn't be together. Like, God knew what he was doing when he put us together.
Yeah.
Because there's no way I'm budging, and he wouldn't have budged. And thank God we saw eye to eye with that. But those difficult conversations, have them beforehand.
Yes, agree.
And so he has always been, that was his whole life. But for me, it was a pivotal turning point that changed my whole life. It changed his whole life too, but he was 4. And it changed my whole life later on whenever I could really digest that and register it. And then I took off with it, and he is not, I'm the entrepreneur of the family.
Okay.
I'm the extrovert of the family. He's everything behind the scenes that makes everything better and work. That's him. I'm like, I have the idea. Let's do all this stuff. And I just start running. He's like, maybe we need a plan.
Hi, Daniel is over there. Do you see him
He's smiling.
Yeah.
Is that a smirk or a
Daniel
smile?
said, that's me.
He's like, that's Audra and me.
Yeah,
This is how that works.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I came in today. I was like, I want to do this. I want to do that. And I think the lighting needs to be different. And they're looking at me and they're like, Audra.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's got to happen.
That's right.
I
That's
have
right.
things to say in a different format, and I want us to figure that out. So
Yeah.
anyway, they're very used to that. There's so much that's interesting here. How do you? I don't feel like this is a recruitment. I think it's just a teaching that you do in your business, and then the village comes along beside you because they see the benefit. Would that be the case, or are you actively going to the leaders and the Congress? Or tell me how you
Yeah.
fight
So if you
or communicate.
Yes,
not fight.
that's right. Communicate. So if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. And so we've been really blessed in God giving us two very heavy brick feet to set on our stances and hills that we'll die on. And also have the confidence and the connections to be able to go up and speak to legislation. We do that at least once a year. For chiropractic, but also for birth advocacy, medical freedom. So those are our three that they're sick of seeing us up on Capitol Hill because we do go up there quite often. More if, there's certain bills that we're trying to get going. But we meet with senators and Congress as often as we can. And then we keep that separate from our practice, though. Like, our practice members know what we do. They know what we stand for. Most of the time, it's why they come to us, but we do keep that separate. Whenever we're going to Capitol Hill, a lot of times it's just Dr. Kim's not going to be here because she's out of the office. If they follow me on Instagram, they know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But and then as far as any other educational components, it really is a sense area of empowerment. We don't want anyone to feel wrong for what they've chose. Mm-hmm. We just want you to be educated on what you've chose, that you haven't chosen it out of fear, out of lack of knowledge, out of desperation, because we've been there.
Yeah.
And we know exactly what that feels like and where it goes. And so we know what you're being told over here, which is all good, well-meaning information for the most part. And this other side, though, not many people are being told that. And that could be anything. I mean, that could be from controversy of vaccines, or it could be just Tylenol, just your options of birth. I mean, some people have no idea that after they have a C-section, they can actually have a vaginal birth afterwards. That blows people's minds. And that's criminal that your doctor didn't tell you that.
Yeah.
Because that's science.
Yeah.
So we want to beat down the door of science and beat down the door of science that doesn't just highlight you as a practitioner or your profession as a practitioner, but it highlights what's best for the patient.
Yeah. How have you seen movement on Capitol Hill in this direction?
Which one?
I guess with the birth freedom, the medical act, which one, you named three. So which one have you seen the most movement on?
So our biggest one that I, to this date, just love so much is exemptions for vaccines. We have three in America: medical, religious, and philosophical. Philosophical was taken away a while ago. We only have medical and religious. And in 2015, they were trying to get rid of religious exemption. And they had a complete uproar on their hands in regards to that. People were beating down the door. So they backpedaled on that. It's tried to come up several times since, and it's been beaten down really quickly. I expect it to be coming back pretty soon. It's just due time. But that's been, I would say, the one that we can't afford to lose there. Mm-hmm. Birth advocacy, I was up on Capitol Hill last year, and 3 years prior to that, advocating for CPMs, which are certified professional midwives, to get a license, to be able to be licensed and therefore assist with low-risk home births, because the research does show that low-risk home births with a accompanying CPM is healthier for the outcome of the mom and the baby. And we are surrounded by states that have that licensing.
But
North Carolina
criminalized. It's criminalized in North Carolina.
It is a felony now as of 2023.
Did y'all hear that? It's a felony in North Carolina. I don't know who is going to see this, but I hope that does something for you to understand it is criminal what our forefathers and foremothers did just fine on their own. I'm not saying they didn't have trouble. I'm not saying there wasn't mom and infant deaths. I'm not saying that. But our bodies were designed to give birth. They just were or are. So to really have that choice taken away from you by a state to say, I don't know, you have to give birth in either this birthing center that we said, or you have to give birth in a hospital, when all you want is your comfortable surroundings and, and still have those places. There are high risk pregnancies. You needed medical intervention for your first child. So obviously that's not something that we're sitting here advocating against, but we are just bringing up another side because I feel like the scales are very unbalanced when it comes to this. And it's just not pushed. It's not, there's no education. There's not a commercial about it. Hey, do you think you want to do this? And if they do want to do this, they have to do it in secret.
Which is even more dangerous.
Yeah.
So if you do have a home birth right now and you have to transfer, your attending physicians cannot go with you to the hospital. And so now you're at the mercy of the hospital. And a lot of these women are met with violence, really, from the team in the hospital. Oh, you're trying a home birth? I mean, literally to where they are denying pain medications, denying IVs, having them sit in a room. I mean, there's horror stories everywhere in every profession, but this is not about, some hippie group being like, let us go back to the house and not have any training. These are trained midwives who are medically trained, a lot of times better than OBs, to identify and correct as an emergency situation that occurs.
I think what you said earlier was very important, because it's not just communication, even at the Capitol. It's educating people. And
sometimes just one at a time.
Mothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Educating
I
mothers.
remember too, I had a biofeedback test when one of my daughters was harmed by a vaccine. And I wasn't very up on everything at that point. And she spiked a fever and kept the fever for 1.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I took her to the naturopathic doctor in Tulsa. I drove her all the way there. And he did the biofeedback, and it was so specific in her body that it said, your mother had the norovirus in the second trimester of your development. And I did. And I was in the hospital for all of that. And then it showed us a path. And within 2 weeks, she stopped running the fever with, excluding a food and adding a supplement. Then she, was completely without a fever.
Wow. So
you can't help but, be cautious after that and say, I'll do this and I'll do this, but I won't do this over here. So anyway, we're all good on that subject, I think. So tell me how you got to open your practice.
I was at High Point Chiropractic at the time, and around 10 months, when my daughter was about 10 months old, I decided to step out of the office and go into stay-at-home mom mode. But instantly realized I don't have the strength that stay-at-home moms have. So I did a lot of prayer. That's the only way I think mothers in general get through, is a lot of prayer. And my families started calling me that I had seen over at my old practice, and they were wanting to come see me, but I had a non-compete, so I wasn't legally able to do that, not at my house at least. But I had a traveling table and I had a baby carrier. So I went with my baby carrier, my baby strapped to my back, and my table, and I went to their homes. And so Village Family Chiropractic was actually born as a traveling chiropractic office, simply really out of convenience and a passion, because I was like, well, this is going to be the easy way to do this, so let's do it. It grew really quickly, and to where I was traveling, 8, 9, 10 hours days. And Annabelle was so good during those times. But
I
it
was
just-
wondering about that.
yeah, she did really great. You know, it was family, so the kids would play together while I'm getting everyone
Yeah.
adjusted. You know, and then we move on to the next family. It was fun, and sometimes families would come and like literally have play dates at a house, and I would come and like 3 or 4 of my families are there, and I'd be able to kids play and I adjust.
That's really smart.
It was cool. It was really cool. And so got really, really busy. And right around that time, God's timing was just beautiful. We moved into our new house and we had a dining room in the front that was just perfect for a table and a desk and a chair. And I was like, boom, that's going to be our next location of Village Family Chiropractic. And so I started seeing patients out of there. That grew really quickly too. God's provision is just amazing. And, you know, usually if your neighbors see a bunch of people come in and out of your house, they will think maybe you're doing unsavory things. So I did have to let everyone know that I was actually a legitimate business, not a drug dealer. And but we did at the time, it was not a blessing. It's a blessing now. But at the time I did have a neighbor call the city on me and, you know, was not happy with the cars and such. And those unsavory people that I was seeing, like the
Yeah.
pregnant moms and the babies and such. And so
They're such a threat.
I know, a total threat to the
Yeah.
whole environment of a neighborhood. And anyway, but it was a blessing at the time because the city came out, knew how many people I was seeing, and they're like, yeah, you can't do that. Like, we're going to need you out within the week. And so I had 75 people, actually, I'm sorry, I had 75 people on the books for the next week. And by Monday, I had, I think, maybe 25 or something seeing on that Monday. And I was like, what am I going to do? So we just beat the street, find a place. We thought we had the perfect place. I had the keys in hand. And Joe calls me and is like, hey, you got to see this location. And it was where the Village is now, right over the railroad tracks. It was actually by the railroad tracks in a cemetery. That's where we're at. We're off Grave Street.
Okay.
And so I was like, wow, Joe, that just sounds perfect, doesn't it? He's like, I'm telling you, there's something about this space. And so once I got there, I felt it. It was so healing, and God really anointed that space for us. And little did I know that railroad tracks are the number one attraction for the kids. You know,
that would be
they
true.
love it there. When the train comes, all their little faces get pressed up against the window. It's very, very cute.
When the train comes here, we have to stop production.
Yeah,
It's right out there.
impacts people different ways.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, so then, the Village was moved there. I returned the keys to the other place, apologized, and then that's where we've been since. Joe actually didn't join me then. He was still over at High Point.
Okay.
Once we had our second set of twins, that was when we were like, okay, 5 kids, 2 businesses, we need to consolidate. And he joined the practice at that point. My dream for the Village then was able to really start taking shape. Because I wanted kind of a one-stop shop for wellness for growing families. Childbirth education, lactation consultants, prenatal yoga, massage therapy, naturopathic doctor, functional med, you name it, pelvic floor therapy. I wanted it all under one roof.
Wow.
And so we were able to start doing that. Now we have 4 different providers. We have chiropractic, lactation consultant, massage therapist, and childbirth education on the regular at our office. But then we also have this space available where people come and they teach certain functional med type classes.
That's cool.
Or do different workshops. Different providers do different workshops there.
And is that on your website when those things are happening, or
Yep.
social media?
Yep, it's on our website. It's on all of our socials.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, and we're looking to expand that. We're still looking for a new space because we just keep growing and we are just busting at the seams, which is such a blessing. And we're looking for a bigger space to be able to have even more providers under one roof.
Did you ever get your business plan, like the infrastructure of that?
Not at all. The only business plan I ever made was one I had to do for a grade. Remember that one business class I was telling you about?
Yes.
That was, 6 p.m. on a Friday that nobody wanted to go to. I had to do a business plan for a grade. And so that was the only one I ever did. I would love to see what that looked like actually now and see, for what I've done. But
are you comfortable running your business and knowing all the sides of it, or have you outsourced some of that?
I definitely use the gifts that other people have for sure. Whenever Joe joined, he is definitely my analytical. He's my analytical guy. You know, he joined and he's like, hey, let's see the books, you know, for analysis purposes. And I was like, well, I'll do you one better. The bank account has never gone in the red. He's like, that's not good business. So we had some learning to do. I had some learning to do. But the passion is what's kept us in business. I just last week I got Business Person of the Year, and that was one thing that I said at the conference was I feel like a fraud a little bit, but not only in the business aspect. In the passion aspect, absolutely not.
Was it with who's with the
chamber?
With the chamber, you got that award.
Yeah.
We talked about that before we
Yeah, we
started
did.
filming. So I mean, that's a great accomplishment. But you talked about earlier too about you're the one with the entrepreneur spirit, and that's what we see a lot of times with entrepreneurs: this passion, this drive, and you don't have it all figured out.
No.
And a lot of people watching need to understand that. I mean, you got a passion for a business or a product, and you're not going to have it all figured out.
And
all the
Just
time.
get moving.
Just
get moving.
Get going.
That's such an important thing. I hear so many
Yeah.
say
Me
too.
that. You
Don't
gotta
sit
get
on
moving,
it.
Get moving.
If God gives you a message or a word or whatever it is to serve his people with, get going.
And
Just
you can
do
figure it out as you go
will
along.
figure it
Yeah.
out. He'll figure it out for you. Stop thinking you got things under control anyways, because you don't. Especially when you're deep in business, you realize you really don't have
No,
stuff
you
figured
don't.
out. You're on a wing and a prayer.
And sometimes the city will make you figure it out.
That's right.
So
That's right. God will use them too.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. That's such wonderful nuggets of knowledge in there. And the biggest one is just get started. Just do it and stop waiting for all the stars to supposedly align and for you to have a business degree. It's not necessary. You have to have a passion and you have to work on that passion. I think that you need to be judicious about how you prepare for the business that you are going into. And you have definitely done that. So I want to say thank you. Find Village Family Chiropractic on all the socials. We'll put up their website and their social media here. Get in touch with them. This is a great place to be with so many services offered that are just not offered everywhere else, or if they are, they're segmented. And so wouldn't it be great to just go to one place? Also, visit Legacy Podcast Studio on all of our social media, our website. If you have someone you want to nominate to come and have a sit down like we're having right now, get in touch with us. If you have questions that you want answered from a business perspective or any of that, please contact us. And with that, we will see you next time.